So welcome to Bible Storying, and we are Bible storying through the Bible chronologically, and we're up to the life of Abram. And before we get started, let's ask God to help us as we tell this story. So let's pray first. Lord God, thank you for the chance to tell this Bible story. Thank you again for the opportunity to be in your word. Thank you, Lord, for my friend helping me today. I pray, God, you'd speak to us. And I pray, Lord, that we would hear from you. And I pray that you would use us on YouTube also, that many people could be blessed by it and learn how to tell Bible stories, see the steps involved in the process, and also be blessed by your word. So I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. So before I share the story, I want to give a little bit of background to the story. Again, this is a story about Abram. And in this story, we're going to see Sarah has been mentioned, but in this story, she's actually going to be part of the story. We see that they've traveled from the land of Ur up to way north to Haran, and then now, which was about over 1,000 kilometers or so, then God led them into Canaan, which was over another 1,000 kilometers. So they've traveled a lot, and they've now lived in Canaan for about 10 years in this story. And there was something else in the background. God, the promise, the Abrahamic covenant. God gave Abraham a promise. We've seen that he's told him, I'm going to make you a great nation. I'm going to make your name great. And I'm going to bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Every family of the earth is going to be blessed through Abram. That's what God told him. And we also see that Abram believed God and God counted it as righteousness. We saw that in the last story. And God has been encouraging Abram to help him believe by having him count the stars, by doing a sacrifice and a ceremony to help him see that he is truly going to keep his promise. So Abraham is believing the promise, and that's where this story begins. So the story is out of God's word. I'm not making this up. It's not from me. So we're continuing on through the book of Genesis. And at the end of the story, I'll give you the reference. So this is where the story begins. So Sarai, Abram's wife, was not able to have a baby. She was barren, and she hadn't had any children. And she went to Abram, and she said to Abram, Abram, I have my maidservant here. Her name is Hagar from Egypt, and I want to give her to you, that you would sleep with her, and that maybe through her we could have a family, we could have some children. So Abram was like, okay, I'll do that. We'll do that. And so Sarah got Hagar, and she brought him to Abram, and she gave her to Abram as his wife. And Abram took her, and they were together. They slept together. They had sexual relations, and Hagar became pregnant. She conceived. Well, when Hagar conceived, she began to despise Sarai. And so Sarai came back to Abram and said, Abram, this is your fault. You took Hagar and you slept with her. Now she is pregnant. Between you and me, the Lord is going to show who is guilty, whose fault this is. Well, Abram told Sarai, listen, Hagar is your servant. She's yours. You do with her what you want to do with her. So Sarai began to treat Hagar badly, began to be harsh on her, hard on her, and treat her very badly, to the point where Hagar ran away. And Hagar ran away to a place, a road, to a spring, and it was by a road that goes to a place called Shur. Well, Hagar was there, and the angel of the Lord came down, and he asked Hagar, Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going? And Hagar said, I am running away from my mistress Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said, listen, Hagar, you need to go back to Sarai, and you need to humble yourself before her. I'm going to make you and your offspring a great nation, so big that you won't even be able to count them all. And Hagar, you're going to have a son, and you're to name him Ishmael. And his name means God hears. For the Lord has heard your situation. That is the story. So now I would like to ask my friend if he would be willing to volunteer and just tell the best that you can remember. If you don't remember it all, that's okay. And the story starts, which is usually the hardest part, is Sarai, who was barren, uh, didn't have any children, and she came to Abram, started talking to him.
Okay, so try to go back and retell the story. As Ken said, um, Sarai, she came to Abram, her husband, and she wanted to talk with him because she had been unable to conceive a child, and So she came up with a solution, and she said, "Look, I have this slave, this servant that works for me, and I would like to give her to you as your wife, and maybe through her we can build a family." And this lady's name was Hagar. And so Abram, he conceded to this idea, and he said, "Okay, I'll do that." And so he took Hagar as his wife, and he slept with her, had sexual relations with her. And after that time, she conceived, and she became pregnant. Um, and after that happened, uh, Sarai began to observe um, that Hagar was becoming very disrespectful to her, and had a sense of contempt towards her and towards her life. And so Sarai became really angry about this, and she felt disrespected. So she went to Abram, her husband, and said, "This is your fault. You took this woman as your wife, and you had a relationship with her, and now she's acting this way towards me. And you are going to need to fix this problem." And so Abram said to Sarai, his wife at that point as well, "Hey, this is your servant, and you do with her as you wish." And so at that point, Sarai became really just not kind to her, was making life really much more difficult for Hagar at that point. She wasn't showing her any favor, and was disrespecting her as well, to the point that the Hagar was really upset and hurting, and so she ran away. When she got to a place as she was running, the angel of the Lord came down and spoke to Hagar, and asked, "Where have you come from?" And she said, "Well, I have come from my servant's house. I am now pregnant, and my my master is not my servant's house, my master's house. My master is angry with me, and I've had to run away from her because I am now pregnant with her husband's child." And the angel spoke to her and said, "I want you to go back. I want you to have this child and name him Ishmael." Um, and at that point, I want you to go back. I want you to have the child, and I want you to be submissive to Sarai. And and he said that what this child would be the father of many people. He would make him into a great nation. And so Hagar listened, obeyed this instruction, and went back to where they lived, and where she would eventually have the child.
Good. Yeah, you remembered it very well. I'll tell the story again, and this time you're going to help me.
Okay.
Yeah, it won't be hard. You'll see how it
Okay.
goes. So Sarai, she wasn't able to what?
She wasn't able to conceive a child.
Right. And so she came to Abram, and she said, "Abram, I have this idea. I want to bring to you somebody."
One of her servants.
Yeah, and do you remember her name?
Hagar was her
Hagar.
name.
And she said, "I want to bring you Hagar, and I'm going to have Hagar, I want her to be your
Your wife.
your wife. And maybe through Hagar, we can have what?
Children.
Children." And so Abram, he, what did he do?
He took her as his wife.
Yeah, he agreed and went with Hagar, and he took Hagar as his wife, and those two, they had relations. And then what happened to Hagar?
Hagar became pregnant.
Pregnant. That's right. She conceived, and then when she conceived, she was in the household of Abram and Sarai, and she began to do something towards Sarai, feel a certain way towards Sarai.
She felt contempt or anger or just disrespect, I think.
Contempt, anger, all kinds of things probably. And I think it uses the word contempt, or maybe even one translation said she began to despise her. Didn't feel good towards her. And so Sarai, she decided to go back to Abram, and she said, Abram, this is what?
This is your fault.
This is your fault because you took Hagar and you did what happened?
She got pregnant.
Yeah, you slept with Hagar, and this is your fault. And Sarai began to talk and say, the Lord is going to what? Between the two of them.
I don't remember.
The Lord is going to judge and show who's what?
Who's at fault?
Who's at fault? He's going to show us. And at this point, Abram said, you know what? I am guilty. I shouldn't have done this. Did he do that?
No.
No. What did he do? He said, hey, Sarai.
Do whatever you want.
Yeah, do whatever you want to her. She's your slave. She's your possession. So Sarai began to treat her how? Treat Hagar
she was harsh with her.
Harsh with her, treated her badly to the point that Hagar did something.
She ran away.
She ran away, and she went to a place, a road that went to Shur, it says, and she was by something that you can drink.
She was by a spring.
By a spring. And while she was by the spring, somebody came and started to talk to her. Do you remember who that was?
The angel of God.
The angel of the Lord, yeah. Came and began to talk to her and said, Hagar, servant of Sarai. He did two things. He said, where are you?
Where are you going?
Where are you coming from and where are you going?
Okay.
Yeah. And Hagar said, oh, I'm running away from
my master.
My master or my mistress. Who uses her name?
Sarai.
Sarai, yeah. And the angel of the Lord told her, listen, you need to do something.
He told her you needed to go back and you need to obey her, submit to her.
You need to go back to Sarai, your master, and humble yourself before her, submit to her. Yeah, exactly. And he began to tell her something. Now, Hagar, I'm going to do something great with you. What am I going to do? What did he say with her? Something's going to happen.
That she was going to have the child, and that it was going to become a great nation.
Yeah, a great nation to the point that she wouldn't
be able to count
all her descendants. Yeah, it's going to be a big nation, and that she was going to have a
son.
A son. That's right, and she was to name him
Ishmael,
and Ishmael means the Lord who
hears,
because I have heard your plight, or I have heard your suffering. Yeah, very good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go and begin to look at this story and look for spiritual observations, see what God would show us as we look through it. Well, thanks for helping me.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So now we're going to go ahead and look at this story. And I wanted to start with what would it be like? Abram and his wife he's probably close to 86 or so. She's probably in her 70s towards 80, somewhere between 80 to 100, their ages. What would it be like to be given a promise that you're going to have a child, especially for a lady at that age? What might that feel like, you think?
I'm sure it would feel impossible. It would feel you want to trust God. You want to believe in what He says. I think deeply you would, but at the same time you would question whether whether or not it was really true at
Yeah.
that age.
Yeah, I think that's an insightful thing with this story for sure. So, um, yeah, real challenges,
Mm.
if they're real people,
Mm-hmm.
and this isn't a make-believe story,
That's right.
which I believe it's true. Um, Good. So we see in the first part of the story, Sarai goes to Abram and she's not able to have children. She's barren. And she says to Abram, listen, I have this maidservant named Hagar. I have this idea to give her to you, and you can have relations with her. And maybe through her, we could have a family. What do you think? And Abram is like, okay, well, that's a good plan. Or he didn't say, I don't know if he said that, but he agreed to it. What might we learn about Sarai? Start with what might we learn about Sarai and who she is spiritually as a person by this idea that she comes up with.
Mm. It definitely seems like she was struggling to trust God
Hmm.
because, as you said in the introduction, before this story, that they had the promise
Hmm.
that they would have a child, at least one, right, and then it would multiply, as you said, and then she's clearly becoming impatient, and it's understandable.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lack of faith. I think there's a lack of perseverance in her faith. But I also would just submit to that it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I understand.
Yeah, I can feel for her situation. She's probably close to 80 years old, and she's probably thinking, how in the world is this ever going to
Mm-hmm.
happen?
Yeah,
We need to make it happen or something.
yeah.
I don't know. That's interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't feel like a really weird thing to do. I mean, it does in a way because of the what she does, but it is an option, I guess. What do we learn about Abram when who he is spiritually when he says, "Okay," agrees to it?
Well, the story is interesting to me because when you were sharing the story and then thinking on the story, we didn't see a lot of reaction,
Hmm.
but he seems so quick to agree,
Hmm.
which I think from a spiritual standpoint that we don't know what's not written, right? But at
Hmm.
the same time, if we take that just as it's written,
Hmm.
this was a conversation. It seemed like it was decided relatively quickly, and it doesn't seem like he gave it a lot of thought. And
Yeah.
I think that bothers me a bit that that he so quickly went with this plan and was stepping into kind of taking matters into their own hands.
Yeah. Quick, like yeah, seemed to agree to it fairly. He didn't like. Of course, we don't know what the conversation was, but it
Right.
seemed like he was pretty quick to agree. What do you think would be something else that Sarai could have done? What are some? We see what she did do. She came up with this idea with Hagar. What other choices do you think she could have made?
Hmm. Well, some time had passed, right?
Hmm.
Up to that point.
Yeah, they've been there for 10 years already.
So it's unfair to say what she hadn't done. I think from my standpoint, like I don't want to say she didn't do this or that, but certainly we would want to pray
Hmm.
and we would want to go to God. And it seems like God was relatively available
Hmm.
in that the way he met with Hagar so quickly that that I think that they had experiences where God had revealed himself to them.
Hmm.
And so I don't want to say she didn't pray because maybe she did up until that day, but I feel like we don't see that reliance in God in that and almost taking it into our own hands. And so certainly we can pray. I think also it would have been probably wise to discuss this with Abram,
Hmm.
rather than bringing him a plan. And I think even in a close relationship, whether it's marriage or something else, it's worth like, and maybe she had, we don't know, but at least having a discussion as to what she's thinking and how she's feeling, because
Yeah.
he might have been able to help her.
Yeah. She could have like prayed or went to Abram and said, I'm really discouraged. How is this going to happen? What do we do?
Mm-hmm.
And he could have, what choices did he have? We see he just kind of said, okay. What else could have he done? What choices could have he made?
Well, I think he could have prayed about it also.
Yeah.
Or, the interesting thing of taking another wife as well.
Yeah.
That was a big step that I would assume, from taking what I know of Scripture in general, wouldn't have been something God would have approved of. And so I think that I think I would assume that they knew that, based on their relationship with God and their faith. And so I think choosing sin over choosing to wait on God was a big thing. So I think I certainly would say, Abram, you need to go to God before making this decision and relying on someone else's idea, and consult with God. Why hasn't this happened yet?
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that they chose to sin. That maybe I don't know if they felt guilty, or we see it as sin, but I often wonder, did they see it as sin? Like, this is a good plan. God will like this. I don't know. I'm not sure what it was like back in the day if polygamy was a thing. Like having multiple wives was okay. That it seemed to be something that happened. I don't know what the culture was like. That'd be good to study. Like in the days of Abraham, did men have multiple wives? Is that normal? You know. But we know that if you have more than one wife, it's probably not going to go well. It'd probably be a lot of problems.
He certainly chose to introduce a lot of new challenges.
Yeah, I would think so.
They both did.
They did, yeah. He could have said, listen, Sarai, let's wait upon the Lord. He's going to do something, but let's not do this. He could have said that. He could have did something different, but he just, okay, let's go. Good. And then when Sarai came to Abram and had this idea, was offering this slave basically to him as, another wife, what kind of impact do you think that had on Abram?
Well, for one, I think it probably reaffirmed any doubts he may have had at that point.
Caused doubt.
Yeah.
Like reaffirmed doubt. That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that before.
He probably was already having some similar doubts as she was, but we don't hear a solution from him. So he eagerly took this solution. And then oftentimes I think when if we are struggling with something, and in this sense it was their faith, right? Or their perseverance in their faith. And when we lean into that by making opposing decisions and not trusting God, I think oftentimes, at least in my experience, it then elevates those feelings and brings in new ones.
Yeah.
So if there's any idea in their mind, you mentioned polygamy, that if in their heart that this is a sin, then they've now taken that guilt on. And they are taking on the guilt of not waiting on God. And so I think back to your point with him, I think sin distances us from God. And so we can't put this thing in between us and God and still see him clearly. And so he's now introducing I don't know how deep that wall or how thick that wall became for him,
Mm-hmm.
but from my perspective, it appears to be a pretty thick wall, and so that distances his line of sight towards God and his
Mm.
faithfulness and trust going forward. I
Mm-hmm.
think.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good insight. Maybe it was much clearer, but after this, when they both agree to do this, like you said, it introduces a problem, a barrier to the relationship with God. That's really good. Um, how do you think it impacted their marriage and their relationship when Sarai did this?
Oof. I suspect it was very significant.
You would think so.
Yeah, because oftentimes with our relationship with God, we feel that distance
Hmm.
and this obscure nature. But God is persevering in his love for us, right? He
Sure.
continues to love us, he continues to pursue us. But now you have two sinful people
Hmm.
carrying this burden of sin and distance, not a God that's continuing to love and pursue, and one person may be pulling away.
Hmm.
You have both these people that have this opposition, and Sarah is now resentful, so she's pulling away from him. She's angry, so she's pulling further away, and he's probably insecure now, and
Hmm.
he's probably frustrated with her for blaming him.
Sure.
It was her idea, and she blamed it on him.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just, oh, it's a huge division would have to have
Yeah.
come.
You're referring to later in the story. We'll get there for sure. But yeah, that's like a picture of maybe how it you see this tension now in their relationship. The way Sarah is acting, anyway.
Mm.
Yeah. From this part of the story where he just agrees, what kind of person do you think Abram is? What's his like personality? You think in the way he's dealing with Sarai? Any ideas or clues?
I mean, it was a very passive
Mm.
way of just accepting this offer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't,
He could have been passive, possibly.
yeah,
Yeah, it seems like he is. But
yeah, I don't know, but it also it brings a lot into question for me, like how quickly he said yes.
yeah, did
And
he
even you
wait?
kind of chuckled as you said it a minute ago. He was just like, "Okay, we'll just go
Yeah.
for it." And I question that, but also he wasn't a young guy. Like he was an old guy. I would
Mm.
have thought that I would have thought wisdom would prevail in
Mm-hmm.
this.
Yeah.
At his age, you say he's probably around 86,
Mm-hmm. Possibly older, but at least 86 or so.
but wisdom clearly didn't prevail in that they were now trying to give a solution for God, which they so yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, he could have hesitated and thought about it a while. Um, doesn't say, but it seems like he just agrees from reading it. But that'd be a good study. Like, was he apprehensive? We don't know. Yeah,
Mm.
doesn't seem to be,
No.
but he possibly could have been. Yeah. And from the way Sarah is navigating this thing and coming up with stuff, what kind of person is she?
Definitely controlling,
You think? Yeah.
I would say. And
Yeah. And we kind of see that later in the story some too with different things. But
yeah, she tried to take over,
yeah.
and I used the word passive before, but he didn't try to step in and lead.
Mm.
We don't see him saying, "Hey, I see what you're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
This is not what we were promised."
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to continue to trust what we've been promised and trust that if this is what God wants, then he'll make that clear. But
Mm.
usually God doesn't make himself clear through what we would perceive as sin. And
Yeah.
we can talk about whether polygamy was right or wrong in that time or culturally, whatever. It clearly created a divisiveness, and so it leads me to believe it was sin. And
Mm.
so, um, yeah, I forgot the question now, but I think I answered
Yeah.
it.
What kind of person was she?
Yeah, controlling, I think.
Good. Let's go on in the story. So we see that Abram agrees, and then it says that Sarai goes and gets Hagar, her maidservant, and she actually gives her to Abram as his wife, which I find interesting wording. And Abram takes her, and they go, and Abram takes her, and they go, and it says they slept together, had relations together, and then Hagar conceives and becomes pregnant. Just from this part of the story, now we have Hagar entering in as a person who's involved, obviously. From this part of the story, from what Sarai did in taking her slave and what Abram did in taking her as a wife, what kind of impact do you think this had on Hagar?
Well, we don't really see that she had much choice.
Yeah, she's a slave. I mean, or a servant, says.
So I think this is a big ask, right?
Mm.
And so if you're the master and servant, and we don't really see a whole lot about that relationship before, right?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't talk about that. But to be put in this position, and she was clearly in a position of being low or in a position of being told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know if she wanted to do that or she didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I, I would assume, I don't know. I don't think we didn't discuss this in the story, but I would assume she was probably significantly younger. If they would assume that she could get pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
if the doubts were, I'm old, I can't do this, I'm past this, I would only assume she's significantly younger,
Yeah.
and so I think for her, like it's also for them as her master.
Mm.
I don't think they led her well either,
No.
and yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would think she would have been a lot younger, or at least young enough to have a baby, to conceive, to become pregnant. Yeah, that's interesting to think about. It says that she became Abram's wife. And how do you think that impacted Hagar and how that made her feel to become Abram's wife?
I would have to assume that she always felt like Sarai was Abram's wife
Hmm.
and that they weren't equal.
Mm-hmm.
If age is an issue, as we just mentioned,
Mm.
she was a slave.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't feel the same,
Mm.
but now she's carrying a child
Mm-hmm.
for her master,
Mm.
and I would assume, based on the nature of maybe motherhood,
Mm.
that this is her child,
Mm.
and and but you're being used to build a family for someone else. Like,
Mm.
I just think a lot of emotional components would have existed
Mm.
within her, and just feeling really less.
Mm.
And this was a really important task she was put in charge of, and now she starts to realize maybe she was being used, and it's not right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there's all those things. Maybe she could use the baby as leverage to get a better position in life. I don't know. Maybe she's like, oh, I leveled up. I'm a wife of Abram now, and I'm going to have his baby. We're going to see just coming up, we're going to see that she begins to despise or dislike or look down on Sarai. I think he used the words despise. Um, that's interesting. But I wanted to ask, what do you think the long-term impact is of Hagar now having a child with Abram?
Well, I think there's probably always this sense of divisiveness that would exist between all three of them, really.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately the child,
Mm.
because the child will sense this tension.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, I think they took on a long term tension
Yeah,
by this decision that they made.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's a long-term tension, and it's going to have long-term impacts, really, even to today.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and when we think about this, what could we learn about God and His character and how He deals with people, His people, by all this so far? I think we could see something.
So far.
Yeah, we see more later, but clearly.
Well, clearly they made some decisions on their own,
Mm-hmm.
and God didn't seemingly didn't step in to stop them from making this decision.
Yeah, He could intervene. I mean,
Um, I I think we'll learn down the road in this story that they weren't capable of obstructing his story
mm-hmm.
and his motives and
Mm-hmm.
his direction,
Mm.
but he certainly allowed them to take on this tension and
Mm.
this sin as well. Like he
Yeah,
could have stopped it.
yeah, He allowed it to happen. I find that interesting.
And her, not only for her to be taken as a wife, but allowing her to conceive as well.
Yeah.
And he, right.
Mm. Yeah, it's very interesting how
Yeah.
God works with people. He's going to let them have consequences. He's going to let it go forward. He doesn't like intervene and stop it. Yeah, good. It's interesting. So all kinds of things to think about how people work and how God works.
Mm.
And then going forward, it says that after this, Hagar began to despise um, Sarai. And so Sarai came to Abram and she was upset and she said something to the effect of, if I remember it right, Abram, this is your fault. I think that's interesting. You took Hagar and you slept with her, and now she's pregnant, she's conceived. And the Lord is going to judge between you and me, who is guilty here. And then Abram is like, listen, she's your slave. You deal with her how you wish. From that, there's a lot in that section. What could we learn about Sarai? Well, first of all, what can we learn about Hagar and the fact that she begins to despise Sarai? She begins to not think well of her and look, it kind of is the idea of looking down on her. She looks down on her, despises her.
Hmm.
It's critical. I don't know the exact word. I think it uses the word despise. Now I want to look it
Well,
up.
I don't know, man. This is where the story gets a little tricky, and for me,
Hmm.
like because it makes sense to me.
Hmm.
A lot of these stressors and a lot of these tensions, all coming on them based on the decision that they made. They
Hmm.
failed
Yeah.
ultimately, and so I think for her, like I think she, again, I would have presumed she's younger.
Hmm.
I hadn't thought about what you said. Maybe she's going to use this as leverage
Hmm.
to go into something else and be more valuable, more important. I hadn't given that any thought, but it seems like it has some legs to that thought. Like as I
Yeah.
think about it, but I think about for her, what do we learn about
Hmm.
her and her to feel this way? I think she was probably insecure,
Mm-hmm.
and I but they put her in that situation, and
Yeah.
so I think she reacted out of a probably a normal tension, and she didn't want to follow
Mm-hmm.
what how they weren't really leading her, but
Right.
she didn't want to follow the situation that they had created.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see why. I use the word despise, and I'm trying to remember if that's the right word. It's kind of the idea that she was looking down on Sarah and seeing her as a lesser person. When you hold somebody in contempt, it's like,
They're guilty.
uh, uh, I think it means like kind of like despising someone, but you look down on them. It's like a mixture of
Mm,
looking down and hating someone.
mm,
You think you're better than them. I
mm,
hold you in contempt. I
mm,
think I'm better than you, and I don't like you.
mm,
So I think I said both those things kind of like that when I told the story, I hope. Anyway,
mm,
so we see in the story that she says, when she conceived, she looked at Sarah and held her in contempt and didn't like her. I think I used the word despise earlier. So what could we learn about Hagar? And you mentioned, she didn't want to be possibly in that place. But when we think about the word contempt, idea of like looking down on someone, what could we learn from Hagar in that way?
Yeah, I think there was probably an element of pride from her as well, that she's able to get pregnant. There's something wrong with Sarai that she can't get pregnant, or maybe God values me and he's giving me this thing, but he won't give it to you.
Yeah. I was wondering if she, like comparing, like you're saying, I was wondering if Hagar is wanting to. I mean, what are some choices that Hagar could have made? She's holding her in contempt. What could have she done?
I guess it's hard to know what their relationship was, but from a godly standpoint, and that's hard for me to go there because the whole mix up that they're already in, but just even from this standpoint of having some sympathy for this person that's unable to have a child, at least to this point, and being sensitive to that and saying, this wouldn't have been what this lady would have wanted. That this lady is at her final straw, and so this is what the conclusion that she came to was best. And maybe even looking at the situation to say, this wasn't ideal for her, it's not ideal for me. But again, it's very hard for me to see it that way for this lady, because they put her in this situation. She probably most likely didn't have much choice in the matter.
Yeah.
But I do think, I could sense there, I'm adding words to the scripture's not fair, but I could sense probably that she probably talked about Sarai, or
yeah, could have.
were saying things or whatever. I don't really know.
Better than her. I can have a baby. She can't. I imagine in the culture, if you're barren, it's pretty bad. From what I understand, it's like a curse or something horrible. Well, good. Yeah, I was thinking something she could have done is like, maybe I can get rid of Sarah. If I just like poison her and kill her, I can be Abram's wife. Yeah. Or she could have gone to Sarah and said, "Oh, Sarah, I mean, look, I know I'm just your donor. I'm just your surrogate body here. I'm just your slave. But hey, when my baby is born, will you let me have a part of his life? Could I help you raise him? Would that be okay?" She could have approached it in that way, but she didn't do that. Those are choices she could have made. And looking at Sarai, how she responds to Abram and says to him, "Listen, this is your fault because you slept with Hagar, and God is going to judge between you and me. Who's guilty here?" What could we learn about Sarai and how she's dealing with the situation?
Oof. She's clearly angry, and she's starting to blame her lack of trust in God on Abram. He equally had a lack of trust also, but she's now trying to push everything off him. I think she probably feels guilty. I think she feels unhappy. She's regretting her decision. Instead of going to God and asking forgiveness, she's trying to hand off the guilt to him.
Yeah, you mentioned some things that she could have done. She could have gone to God and said, "Oh, Lord, what do I do now?" Yeah, she's trying to hand it off to him. You said, yeah, that's good. Whose idea was this? I mean, Sarai's. And what kind of impact do you think this had on Abram when she came to him all angry? "Look what she's doing to me," and said all these things. "It's your fault, and God's going to judge who's right here." And
I think he probably saw it coming. I don't think this happened overnight.
Wasn't a surprise, maybe.
It wasn't a surprise, and I think his decision had already been made. I suspect that And I don't know if we can have some reflection on the earlier decision that he made it so quickly, in the same way he seems to react really quickly to this.
Mm.
Like there's some foresight into it. I don't know, but he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't really want to talk about it.
Yeah.
There's and he's not in a position to. He's really. I mean, he's guilty too.
Yeah,
And
he has followed through with the plan. I
yeah,
mean, slept with this woman. Now he has another wife, and it is what it is.
right.
He has to deal with it.
So it's almost like he's trying to. I think the phrase is like cut his losses in a way.
Mm.
Like, how can I make this as easy as possible? Because it's
Mm.
going to be really hard to continue to live with Sarai.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the most functional approach here
Mm.
is to let her do whatever she wants.
Yeah.
Again, he's not leading.
No, he's not really giving direction or making any suggestions.
No.
Well, he is. He's saying you deal with it, basically.
Yeah.
She's your slave. Do with whatever you want.
But it was also his wife. So
Mm.
even the disrespect there that he's showing Hagar,
Mm-hmm.
they, like you said, they use the word wife. So it's a big deal.
Right.
Not his first wife, but still a wife. And still now you've taken that on, then you're responsible to her.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting, like she's valued. I mean, the fact that God told her, this angel of the Lord told her, you're going to become, through you, I'm going to make a great nation so big you won't even be able to count how many people. That must have been quite something. Especially in that day and age, it seems like people were, that was a thing, they wanted to, it was all about their offspring and who they were as people. So good. So we've seen many different things in this story. I'm going to go ahead and go for spiritual observation. I'm sorry, spiritual application because of time. And in this story, we saw that we see Sarai coming to Abram with a plan, and we see that God gave them a promise. And they believed in God's promise. They believed in what God was going to do, but then Sarai comes up with this idea, right? Today, do people have an idea of what God wants to do in their life, but then they're like, I don't know how that's going to happen. Wait, I got this great plan. I'm going to do this and make it happen. Does that ever happen today?
All the time.
What would that look like, you think?
Well, I think it's very common to take things into our own hands, as Sarai did. Um, this is a unique situation, um, but I think it's very common for us to move forward with things that we haven't been instructed by God to do yet, and maybe we have a sense of an idea of something, and we think this is good, and we don't see it to come together, but we just move forward with it. And so I
Yeah.
think it's very common, and I think it's rooted in a lack of faith. I think it's rooted in a lack of trust, and ultimately unbelief. And so, though initially they had faith, and I think it says it's credited to them as righteousness, right? At least from Abram's standpoint, they were losing that faith, and that happens to us. That can happen to us in a matter of seconds, really, depending on our circumstances, and that's the nature of humans.
Like little things, big things, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Like God is involved in every aspect of our life, even the little tiny things we don't think about. God knows them. He's involved. He cares. Yeah, so we see it does happen today. And have you or somebody you know ever experienced something where you saw a clear calling, then you, or maybe someone you know, but then God, like in this story, we know that God is still faithful to continue with his promise with Abram. He doesn't break us. He doesn't come and say, I'm done with you because of this. We see actually God continues to work with these people. So have you ever experienced something like that, or someone you know where you're like, oh man, I went ahead and did this thing, but I still see God working?
No, I this is a very random example that just popped into my head as we're sitting here. I remember working with this, would have been a young man at the time. He was a relatively new follower of Christ, a relatively new believer, and I remember he was entering into this relationship with a woman, and and just it seemed like they're just moving really, really quickly, and uh, just progressing really quickly. And I remember talking with him and just feeling this sense of like, this doesn't seem healthy. Like, I didn't know all the details of the relationship. I just remember thinking from this conversation, and I remember it's very random. It was maybe 15 years ago, but I remember even where we were. Like, we were eating at a restaurant. I just remember this sense of like, this doesn't seem healthy right now.
Mm.
And I remember just encouraging him, like, hey, I really think that I don't know where this is coming from. You're not. I don't feel like you're telling me everything, but I do get this sense that you need to slow down.
Mm.
Like, you just need to take this one step at a time. And he said, no, we want to get married. We're going to move forward.
Mm.
And I just told him, I would just encourage you to. I think you need to slow down. This doesn't feel very wise. And I remember telling him that, and he didn't listen to that advice, and he doesn't have to. But I remember not long after, it was a really like difficult end to their relationship, and it had
Mm.
turned out that it was really, really messy, and
Wow.
they had made some poor decisions. And then, but God was so faithful to him
Mm.
that just like a year or so later, he had met someone else and they were married. And I remember seeing them a few years ago and their kids, and they were moving around. And
Mm.
I remembered when I saw him this last time with these kids and this other person in his life. And I
Mm.
remember thinking, man, I remember that conversation when you were just so gung ho that this was where you had to go and who you had to be with and who you were going to be with. And I don't believe I was the only one saying this to him, but we feel like maybe this isn't the right thing. But he was moving forward and just making all these pathways for God, where God already had
Mm.
the right and a good special plan for him. And but not to pick on him, these things happen all the time. But
Mm.
it specifically seems like it lines up well, because he then introduced this hardship on himself and then on this other young woman at the time. And if he would have just been patient and looked to God for guidance rather than his own desires, I think it would have. I'd like to think that they would have ended in a more healthy way, and then he would have been moving forward, and eventually the Lord would have blessed him with where he is today. So,
Mm.
but I don't think it's uncommon, and it's just, I think this happens in all areas of our life, not just
Sure.
relational. I kind of bridge that towards what we're talking about here relationally, but
Mm.
we do that all the time.
Sure. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's a good example, like in marriage relationship, or in a relationship that's leading to marriage, and you're watching someone head down a path of destruction, kind of like, no, that's not a good. You can clearly see, but then God still works in their
Mm-hmm.
life. That's a good example. I remember when I was in high school, I was a new believer, and we had a family ed or sex ed class in California, Sacramento. I was 17 or so, and I'd just become a believer at 16 or right around there. And the teacher was teaching things that were contrary to the Bible back in 1983,
Mm-hmm.
you know, even then, and I remember getting up in class and confronting her and saying,
Wow.
that's not in the Bible. You can't teach that. And I was really obnoxious, and I made her look terrible in front of everyone. And I kind of made an enemy. And
Mm-hmm.
then I felt terrible about it. I felt like it was good to do, but it was not loving. I approached it all wrong, you know. Um, and so it set a bad example. Like, I really wasn't listening to God. I was just like responding to something. And then later I went and talked to her,
Mm-hmm.
and said, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. But had a good conversation with her. But because of that, she was like, she didn't really want to talk. I felt like maybe that's something, a quick reaction,
Mm-hmm.
not really taking time to pray about it or think about it, but just reacting out of a sense of
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I think even in my missionary career, I think of times where I felt like I believed I should have went and did, like when we went to Nakhon Ratchasima for about 2 years. Um, that about did me in, and I don't know what that was about. I often wonder if, like, okay, Lord, maybe I was just wanting to go do a particular thing somewhere out in the least reached parts of Thailand. Really good ambition, but the repercussions were pretty high on my life, on Wendy's life. Good things came out of it. People came to faith, and there's a little group of believers. They're all elderly people in their 80s. Two have died because they were in their 90s when we knew them, but which is odd thing. But it was neat and good. But at the same time, after that experience living there and going through some things there by myself, I felt totally burned out and like, okay, I'm done. I don't want to be a missionary. I don't want to be involved in missions anymore. And we went home for like a year and just spent a lot of time praying and thinking and going through like a lot of walks together, talking and thinking through it. It was like calling on friends. Hey, do you know any jobs? I was like ready to go do something else. And then the Lord said, no, I want you to go back, but I want you to go to Chiang Mai, which I didn't really want to go to. I like Chiang Mai, but I was like, I want to be out somewhere else. But it was like, oh, good, Lord. At that point, I was like, okay, I was ready to be here. This is like home to me, Chiang Mai, probably more than anywhere now in the world. And he let me have permission to back off of the cutting edge in the front line, trying to do the really super hard out prayer walk and engaging lost people in the middle of nowhere by myself, just talking to people or whatever. And said, I want you to help in leadership, a team with your mission, and that's a better place for you. And then it was like a freeing thing, but I think I had to make a mistake. I don't know if that was God's will to take me there. I think it was, but it wasn't what I thought it would be. I don't know if that's the same thing, but anyway.
Now, think about this story, like the ultimate, the story we were going over before, just had years and years and years of waiting for them. Like I feel like it just eventually just got to them, like or got to Sarai, and she wasn't able to continue to just keep walking with God through that. I think
just waiting, I guess.
But I think God's so kind to us. Most of the stories that I think of don't exist in those long periods of time. So ultimately, it seems like they did a pretty darn good job for a while, I guess. I mean, but then ultimately it just got to be too much because even for me in my own life, like sometimes a week, I'm waiting on something for a week. It feels like 10 years,
time,
right? And so I think like, what does 10 years feel like? It's a long time. So I think it is common to man to react, like in your story, reacting too quick or just being impatient in other stories like the one I shared or with this one.
Yeah, for sure. Seeing the big picture, like, they're not going to see Israel per se. They're going to die first, right? But they know that they're going to become a great nation. It's like I often think of these things like these two and think about Thailand and think about, well, we don't know what kind of impact we're going to have long after we're gone. What is God going to do with the people that we shared with? How are they going to function and be? So I find that very encouraging to try to have the big picture in mind, even though it seems impossible. Kind of like them having a child. It's like, how could Thailand ever like come to faith all like on a bigger scale? It's got to grow, right? People got to continue on, and it is growing. It doubles every 12 years. The Thai church around there, so that's encouraging. That's like traditional church, not like any movements or whatever. Just people plotting and doing and being, like our church or whatever.
Yeah.
So, is there anything in this story that you could see that would really like encourage you or help you obey God or go forward in something in your life or really spoke to you? And that would be our last question. It kind of opens it up.
I think one thing that I think is really worth stopping to reflect on is the situation when Sarai first brought this plan to Abram. And as a husband, as a father myself, just sort of thinking through, like, when your spouse or a close friend or someone is clearly struggling, thinking about, okay, making this other decision or kind of taking things into your own hands, like being prepared to respond in a way that is first of all, it's honoring and glorifying to God, but then two is helpful and encouraging to that individual,
Mm.
whether it's your wife or your friend or whoever,
Mm.
business partner. I don't know, like, okay, they're not in a good place. They're presenting something that is in opposition to what we believe and to how we've lived and how we live, and so just recognizing, trying to be prepared
Mm-hmm.
for those times if they come, and
That's really good.
being able
Yeah.
to support them. He seems like he just reacted,
Right.
and so it wasn't healthy for him. He wasn't prepared,
Mm.
and then he wasn't helpful for her. And so
Yeah.
I kind of roll my eyes a little bit when she comes and she says it's all your fault.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
if he's not prepared, then he has a lot of blame to receive as well. It's
Yeah.
all his fault. I don't know about that, but it he certainly
Mm.
he certainly has to take on the responsibility, and he didn't take on the responsibility of helping her and also trying to equally serve God, I think.
Yeah, it's like she was like saying, "You should have said no to me. Why did you say
Mm,
yes? Come on now.
mm.
I thought you were better than that."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Just deal with it." Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
But they're all kind of failing. The word repentance comes to mind, like a choice they could have had at this point when she was upset with him. He could have said, "Hey, listen, let's come before the Lord and let's really pray about this and confess our sin, and let's treat Hagar, or not, yeah, Hagar well, and we can, deal with her and just let her live her life. But he didn't go that route. He didn't like want to do the right thing. He could have accepted his mistake, like repented or
Mm,
admitted his problems, but he
mm.
didn't. It's like,
Yeah.
you just deal with her. Do
Yeah.
whatever you want. I'm gonna go off with the boys or whatever he's
Mm,
doing. I
yeah.
don't know.
It
I
seemed
don't
kind
know.
of lazy.
A little, yeah.
The front end and the back end seemed a little bit lazy to me, and it meaning the front end when she presented this idea,
Hmm.
it's all right, and then secondarily, like, okay, do whatever you want to do with it. It all just
Yeah.
felt pretty lazy. Like he didn't take the time to encourage her, help instruct her. He just kind of went along with it. Like,
Very human. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that encourages me too about this story. They're just normal people. They're not like super great at a lot of things, but God chooses them. He has faith. They're trusting in God's promise, but they're still doing these things. We see He does other things in other stories too. With Sari, it's not so great, but yeah. Thanks so much for helping me with this story. I think we'll just stop there. We've spent a long time in
Welcome.
this story, so thanks so
Cool.
much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.